Welcome to week 2, which is day 6 of the Women of Advent podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Tammy.
I'm Mandy.
And today we're starting to look a little bit more closely at Elizabeth's story, and particularly focusing on joy and what it means to wait with hope and joy. So today we're kind of focusing on the waiting and wondering how waiting transforms us, and especially thinking about ministry and our context here at St. Matthew.
Yeah. Waiting can be super duper frustrating. I don't know if anybody enjoys waiting, in a line or at the DMV or any of that. But it lends itself to learning patience and to noticing what's happening around you. Mm-hmm. For me, it reminds me of, we've talked about all our journeys with seminary, and this was in particular for me, waiting was a big part of mine. Mm-hmm. I had intended to start seminary at one certain time and then had some family circumstances come up. And so I had to make the decision to push it off for a little while longer, and I had to wait a year. But in that year, as I'm waiting for this thing that I worked so hard for and prayed about and discerned that this was the right thing, and then to have to put a stopper on it was just that hope deferred moment. I'm like, oh my God, waiting sounds terrible. But through that year, so much growth happened, so much learning, and I was a totally different person by the time I started seminary and felt more equipped and ready to start that journey than I would have if I would have started when I meant to.
That sounds a lot like Elizabeth's story in our text for today, just the long waiting period of the barrenness and her wanting a child, desperately wanting a child, waiting long for a child, it not happening, and then finally decades later than she expected. And she was transformed. She wasn't the person when she first got married thinking, hey, I want to get married and have a baby. Yeah. It was a process. And it also solidified for her that this was something she really wanted. And so I feel like the joy was probably that much more joyful. For Phil and I, I've talked with you all and you all about this before in previous podcasts, that we struggled with infertility. And so I know what it's like to wait. And I know also on the adoption side of things, what it's like to be told that you think you have good news and then it to not be working out. And so there's something in the waiting that reaffirms who you are, what you want, and it lets you break down and rebuild back into something strong so that you can move forward.
Yeah. This waiting and her identity too. She got to have a whole life. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth's set of circumstances are different from Mary's set of circumstances, and she had found different and new meaning. And yet there is this joy that comes in this hope of this child that is miraculous, and is miraculous whichever way and however long we've waited, but our responses to that story are imbued with our life circumstances and who we are and how we've been. So there's something beautiful about that.
I love that we have Elizabeth and Mary kind of as this dichotomy of young mom, much older mom, and just the joy that we're getting to see that comes with the waiting for Elizabeth.
Yeah. Historically, I'm not great at the waiting. I like things to go just exactly. And the process of seminary, much like you were talking about, Mandy, is all waiting. It's so much waiting, so much liminal space. And I think that at this point, I'm just in a threshold for my whole life is going to be thresholds. And so there's this way in which how we wait shapes us, and how we approach the waiting shapes us.
It's active.
Wondering the activities we do, the way we show up as we're waiting, and how that transforms us.
So the rhythm for today is to spend some time thinking about something that you've been waiting for. Write it down, pray for it. If you feel comfortable, go ahead and put a comment below and just speak into where you've been waiting for something, and pray for patience and joy as you wait.